The story kicks off with Dan, an ex-military biology teacher who's depressed because he can't get a high-paying research job. He's at a Christmas party with his wife and daughter, Murray, when suddenly the TV news goes haywire. During a soccer match, a massive portal opens on the field, and soldiers from the year 2051 step out. They announce that in 30 years, humanity is being wiped out by aliens called white spikes, and they need fresh meat from the past to help fight.
The world goes into a global panic. A mandatory draft is established and Dan gets picked. He's fitted with a jump link device on his arm that tracks him. If he refuses to go, he goes to jail and his family loses everything. Dan decides to visit his estranged father, James, a conspiracy theorist and veteran who lives in the woods, hoping he can remove the tracker. But after a heated argument about Dan's childhood, Dan realizes his dad is too unstable to help and leaves. Later, Dan reports for duty. The base is crowded with nervous civilians, many recording goodbye messages to their families. He meets Charlie, a quirky scientist who uses humor to cope with fear, and Dorian, a hardened veteran on his third tour, who seems unusually calm. They're told the survival rate is abysmal. Only about 30% of people return, and even fewer are sent back a second time. Before they can even finish training, an emergency signal comes from the future, cutting the briefing short. The jump link malfunctions during deployment, causing chaos in the sequence. And instead of landing on a secure base, Dan and his squad drop out of the sky hundreds of feet above Miami, with the city below already damaged and in ruins. Most of the draftees fall to their deaths on the pavement or crash into buildings, but Dan and a few others are lucky enough to land in a rooftop pool, the impact knocking the air out of them as they struggle to stay conscious.
Their mission is to rescue a team of scientists from a lab before the city is firebombed, with only a short window before everything is wiped out. As they move through the ruins, collapsed buildings, abandoned cars, and eerie silence, they find the lab. But the scientists are already dead, their bodies scattered, showing signs of a violent attack. Dan recovers the research data, grabbing whatever files and samples he can, and that's when they see them. White spikes. These things are terrifying. They have multiple limbs, move lightning fast across walls and surfaces, and can shoot lethal bone-like spikes from their tails with deadly accuracy.
The squad gets pinned down almost immediately as the creatures swarm the area, and most of the rookies panic and are ripped apart within seconds, unable to react. Dan, Charlie, and Dorian manage to fight their way out, barely holding it together as they retreat under heavy pressure. They lose consciousness during extraction, overwhelmed and injured, and wake up in a fortified military base buzzing with activity. There, Dan meets the colonel, a composed and battle-hardened leader who reveals herself to be the grown-up version of his daughter, Murray.
Murray is now a brilliant scientist, leading one of the last research teams in the war-torn future. She tells Dan that he actually dies in a car accident in 2030, which devastated her and shaped the course of her life. She's not interested in a family reunion. She just wants his help, staying emotionally distant and focused on the mission. She's developed a toxin that can kill the male white spikes, but it doesn't work on the much larger, more dangerous females, whose biology is more complex and resistant.
Murray leads a dangerous mission to capture a female white spike alive, briefing the team that it's their only chance to study and weaponize a solution. They find one in a deep cavern, surrounded by organic structures and signs of nesting. And after a chaotic battle where dozens of soldiers are slaughtered, they manage to cage her using heavy restraints and sedatives. Back at the base, the situation escalates immediately. The male white spikes, who are highly protective of the female, begin to respond. What starts as distant movement quickly turns into a massive coordinated sea and air assault. They swarm the facility from all directions, emerging from the ocean, scaling walls, and attacking in relentless waves, their numbers overwhelming the base's defenses and pushing the soldiers to their limits. While the base is being overrun, with alarms blaring and soldiers getting overwhelmed, Murray successfully creates a refined toxin that kills the female. However, the base is lost, with defenses collapsing and no way to hold the line. Murray realizes the only way to save humanity is for Dan to take the toxin back to the past and mass-produce it. As the white spikes swarm them and the structure begins to fall apart, Murray is dragged off a ledge. Dan tries to save her and briefly grabs her hand, but loses his grip. She falls to her death just as the jump link activates, pulling him back to the present. Dan returns to the present, shattered by Murray's death, but focused. He still has the toxin. When he brings it to the government, they shut him down.
The time jump program is over, the portal is gone, and the world has already accepted the future war as unavoidable. Dan refuses to accept that outcome. He turns to Charlie, and together they re-examine the one piece of evidence he brought back, a white spike claw. Charlie spots something unusual, volcanic ash embedded in it. That detail shouldn't exist if the creatures only arrived in 2048. They dig into geological and climate data and reach a critical conclusion. The white spikes didn't invade from space in the future. They've been on Earth all along, frozen beneath ice. The war starts when they're accidentally released by melting glaciers. Using ash patterns and warming trends, they trace the likely origin to a remote glacier in Russia. With the government refusing to act, Dan stops asking. He recruits his father James and a small group of veterans, and they prepare to fly there illegally, because stopping the threat now is the only way to erase the war entirely. They locate a massive alien spacecraft buried deep beneath the ice. Inside, the truth becomes clear. The white spikes weren't invaders piloting the ship. They were engineered biological weapons, being transported by another alien species before the ship crashed on Earth centuries ago. Realizing this is their chance to end everything before it begins, Dan and his team start injecting the frozen white spikes with the toxin. It works immediately. The creatures begin dying in place. But the operation doesn't stay quiet. Their actions trigger a chain reaction, and the rest of the hive awakens. Chaos erupts inside the ship as white spikes swarm them. One by one, most of the team is killed in the brutal close-quarters fight. In the middle of the chaos, the female queen breaks free and escapes to the surface. Dan and James pursue her across the frozen landscape, leading to a final confrontation. James takes the risk, drawing her attention and holding her off just long enough. Dan gets close and drives the toxin into her. She doesn't just die, she collapses violently, her body breaking down from the inside before she plunges off a cliff, ending the threat at its source.
With the Queen dead and the ship destroyed, the timeline is altered permanently. The war that wiped out humanity never gets the chance to begin. Dan returns home, not as a man waiting for the end, but as someone who's already faced it and won. He reunites with his wife and finally bridges the gap with his father, James. For the first time, there's no looming countdown hanging over them. Then he looks at Miri, still young, still innocent, and understands the real impact of what he's done. She won't grow up into a hardened soldier. She gets a normal life. A future that was almost erased before it even began. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.